Right now in Kentucky schools, there is this really fascinating and honestly kind of terrifying paradox playing out every single day.
Oh, absolutely. It's wild when you actually look at the details.
Right. So there are English learner students, usually called EL students, sitting in classrooms, right? And they are receiving dedicated, specialized services from their teachers.
Yeah, the teacher is doing the heavy lifting, the student is doing the work, and, real learning is happening.
Exactly. But to the state data system, those students simply do not exist. I mean, they are completely invisible.
Just ghosts in the machine.
Right. And the reason why is almost hard to believe. It's all because somewhere along the line, somebody forgot to check a single box in a computer program.
It really is the ultimate bureaucratic illusion. I mean, the reality on the ground, what is physically happening in that school building,
Yeah.
just doesn't match the reality in the database.
Yeah.
And, well, in the eyes of the state and federal government, if it isn't in the database, it simply did not happen.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is to completely break down the mechanics of Kentucky EL data compliance.
And we've got some really great sources for this.
We do. We are doing this by looking at a very specific, highly illuminating stack of sources. We've got anonymized, real-world district email exchanges, the official Kentucky EL data standards, guidance documents from the Kentucky Department of Education, and, of course, federal civil rights law.
It's quite the stack.
It is. We are going to look at exactly how a massive administrative system basically breaks down at the level of a single keystroke.
So to start, at the center of all of this is something called the EL flag in Kentucky's infinite campus system. Most people in education just call it IC.
Right, I see.
Yeah. For those who might not be deep in the weeds of, educational data management, the EL flag is a literal data field. It's just an indicator that marks a student as an English learner.
Okay, let's unpack this because I think a lot of people naturally assume data entry is just harmless administrative paperwork, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to dismiss.
Oh, for sure. People think, oh, it's just a checkbox.
Exactly. But I want you to think of the EL flag like a hospital intake bracelet. Imagine you walk into an emergency room, you get a bed, the nurses are checking your vitals, and the absolute best doctors in the hospital are consulting on your case.
But the front desk never actually checked you into the computer system.
Yes, you never got that little plastic barcode bracelet around your wrist.
And the immediate consequence there is that the hospital administration has literally no official record of you being there.
Right, the pharmacy won't release your medication because there's no digital patient file to attach that prescription to.
Wow, yeah.
Your insurance company is definitely not going to pay for the visit because, well, they can't verify you were treated. And legally speaking, if the hospital is ever audited, there is zero proof that your treatment occurred.
That is such a good analogy.
Thanks. I mean, the EL flag is that intake bracelet. You might have the best English as a second language teacher in the entire state sitting with a student for hours every week, but without that digital flag, the student is just a ghost.
And what's really fascinating here is the sheer domino effect that one missing checkbox triggers across the entire educational ecosystem.
That's massive.
It is. When that EL flag is missing, the student vanishes from the district's active EL rosters. And because they aren't on the roster, they disappear from federal Title III reporting.
And Title III, just to clarify for everyone, is the specific section of the federal Every Student Succeeds Act that provides funding to schools to support English learners.
Exactly. So no flag means the district loses the federal funding that was meant to help that exact student.
And it impacts their standardized testing, too.
Oh, dramatically.
Mm.
English learners have to take a federally mandated test called the WIDA Access Assessment every single year to measure their language proficiency. Well, if a student doesn't have an EL flag, the state might not generate a test for them at all. Or, if they do somehow take it, their scores can't be properly linked back to their official EL record.
So the data is just orphaned.
Yeah, exactly. And the student's program support plan, which is the individualized roadmap for how teachers are actually going to help them learn English,
Yeah.
that isn't maintained correctly in the system either.
Wow.
Ultimately, they fall completely out of both state and federal accountability metrics.
So to you listening right now, whether you are an educator trying to navigate the software, a district administrator looking at the big picture, or honestly just someone who cares about how bureaucracies actually function in the real world, this deep dive is going to show you how a tiny, seemingly insignificant data entry error can quietly violate federal civil rights laws.
It really is a phenomenal case study in how complex systems fail, even despite the very best intentions of the hardworking people operating within them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know the EL flag is like that vital hospital bracelet. But how does a student walk through the front doors of a school, receive specialized instruction for months, and not get that bracelet?
Well, to understand that, we can look at a real, fully anonymized email chain from a Kentucky school district that is included in our sources.
Oh, this email chain. Reading through it, it is a masterclass in organizational confusion.
It really is. It involves 4 different professionals trying to solve this puzzle. You have an EL teacher, a school registrar, a former district EL coordinator, and the current EL coordinator.
And the catalyst for this whole multi-person email chain is that the district suddenly discovered a significant number of students were missing their EL flags in Infinite Campus.
Right. We actually have the hard numbers here, which is great.
Yeah, tell us the numbers. They found 5 currently enrolled students who were completely missing their flags. Then they found 5 withdrawn students missing their flags. And then an additional student was flagged, or rather unflagged, by the district assessment coordinator. Okay, so that is 11 students entirely undocumented in the system.
11 kids, yes. And as these 4 professionals are looking at these 11 students, the email chain just devolves into a game of hot potato.
Yeah, it really does.
The exact question asked in the email is literally, who is responsible for these updates? Is it the district EL coordinator, the registrar, or the EL teacher after screening?
Reading through this, what strikes me isn't just the confusion itself, it's that 4 different highly educated professionals, all working in the same district on the exact same software system, truly do not know whose job it is to check a single box.
Yeah, it's wild.
And looking at how they actually solve the problem, they don't fix the system. The resolution is just another email saying, hey, going forward, just send the names to the coordinator and the data clerk.
Right.
That is not a standard operating procedure. That's just a Band-Aid in an inbox.
You've just identified the core issue. I mean, the email reveals several overlapping systemic failures.
Okay, let's break those down.
First, there is 0 clear ownership of the data. When 4 people touch a process but nobody owns it, things inevitably fall through the cracks.
Makes sense.
Second, we see a complete lack of proactive auditing. The fact that flags were missing for enrolled and withdrawn students means nobody had been looking at this data for months, possibly years.
Because if a district had a routine auditing process, they would catch an enrolled student missing a flag in the first couple of weeks of school, right? Not halfway through the year by accident.
Precisely. The entire discovery process here was just reactive. They only found these missing flags because someone stumbled across them while looking for something else.
There was no safety net.
No safety net at all.
Yeah.
And we also see what data analysts call data clerk dependency.
What does that mean in this context?
Well, the EL teacher in this scenario knows the student needs the flag. They administered the language screening test, but they physically don't have the IT permissions in Infinite Campus to check the box.
Ah, I see.
They have to send an email to a clerk and just hope the clerk has the time to do it.
And the stakes for these errors are incredibly high, especially for those 5 currently enrolled students. Because the district isn't flagging them, they are basically hiding these kids from the federal government.
Potentially, yes.
The school is spending resources to serve them, but cannot legally demonstrate they are doing so. If the Office for Civil Rights investigates that district, those 5 invisible students represent a documented compliance gap.
A huge one.
But I want to look at those 5 withdrawn students for a second.
Okay.
Why does it matter if a kid who doesn't even go to the school anymore is missing a flag? Like, their time there is over anyway.
It's a fair question,
Right.
but here is why it matters. Withdrawn students' EL records are a permanent part of their longitudinal educational history.
Okay.
If one of those withdrawn students re-enrolls somewhere else, maybe the next town over, or they move to another state entirely, their educational history has to follow them.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah. When a district fails to flag a withdrawn student, they are sending corrupted data to the next school. Receiving school might not realize the student needs English language support, delaying their services by months. It creates permanent historical gaps in state data tracking.
Wow. So that is the administrative nightmare of trying to get students into the data system. But the sources reveal a completely different, equally frustrating problem when it comes to getting students out of the system.
Yes, the exit process.
Which brings us to a scenario that perfectly mirrors the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
That is exactly what it feels like. This scenario deals with what the state classifies as monitored students.
Let's define that.
So when an English learner achieves proficiency in English, they are officially reclassified. But federal law recognizes that you can't just drop all their support overnight. The law mandates that the district monitor their academic progress for 2 to 4 years, just to ensure they are succeeding in general education classrooms without those specialized EL services.
That makes perfect sense. You don't want to just abandon them.
Right, so in our sources, an EL teacher in this same district identifies 6 students who have successfully completed their entire 4-year monitoring period.
I did everything right.
They passed their classes, they hit all the benchmarks, and they are officially ready to have their EL flags removed so they can fully exit the program.
God.
But one of these 6 students hits an absolute brick wall.
And it is a completely artificial, software-generated wall.
Yeah.
So this student was in their 4th year of monitoring, ready to exit, but their home language data field in Infinite Campus still showed as English.
Which obviously has to be a data entry error from when they first enrolled years ago.
Right. I mean, a student wouldn't be placed in an EL program for 4 years if their home language was actually English.
It was undoubtedly an old data entry error made by a really busy registrar during enrollment. But because of that old error, the Infinite Campus software literally locked the EL tab.
It just froze them out.
Yes. It threw up an error message stating that no changes could be made to the student's EL status until their home language was updated to a non-English language.
So the EL teacher logically says, great, let's just update the home language to what it actually is.
And the response from the district office?
Home language updates are not permitted.
Yeah. That was the district's rigid, unbending IT policy. Once the home language was entered during enrollment, no one was allowed to change it.
It's a complete catch-22. It is like being trapped in an escape room. You know, you've solved all the puzzles, you've spent 4 years finding the clues, but the final physical key to unlock the exit door is sealed inside a glass box.
And the rules painted on the wall of the escape room say, you are not permitted to open the glass box.
Exactly. So the student just lives in the escape room forever.
Basically.
Yeah.
I mean, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it demonstrates how rigid, inflexible IT policies actively force school districts into breaking federal law.
Because they have to exit that student.
Right. The district has a legal federal obligation to exit that student from monitoring after 4 years. But their own internal database policy, this whole no home language updates rule, without any clear process for exceptions, prevents them from following the law.
It's wild. An incorrect data entry made by a front office clerk 4 years ago is now permanently blocking a federal civil rights exit procedure.
It really highlights the dysfunction.
And this brings up a massive question. Why do both of these scenarios, the missing flags making students invisible and the trapped monitored students unable to exit, end in this complete paralysis?
Well, the sources point to a core structural flaw in how Kentucky's data systems are managed at the district level. They call it the permission gap.
The permission gap?
Yeah, it is the silent killer of data accuracy in large organizations. To understand it, we have to look at how Infinite Campus is typically structured inside a Kentucky school district. The system is heavily siloed to protect data.
Okay, break that down for us.
So the Census tab, which houses foundational demographic information like the home language and primary language fields, is almost exclusively controlled by the school registrar or a front office data clerk.
Which makes sense on paper, right? Because they are the ones handling the initial enrollment paperwork when a family walks into the building.
Exactly. Then you have the EL tab, which houses the all-important EL flag, the program status, and the program support plan.
And who controls that?
Access to this tab is usually restricted to the district EL coordinator or, again, a designated data clerk.
Okay, so keeping the specialized data with the specialists.
Right. Then you have the assessment data things like the WIDA screener scores used to identify EL students and the annual access test scores. Those are often locked down and only entered by the district assessment coordinator, usually after the Kentucky Department of Education pushes the data down from the state level.
Got it.
And finally, the program exit procedures usually fall back to the EL coordinator or that single data clerk.
Let me synthesize this madness for a second.
Not for it.
The people who actually know the student's daily reality, The people who administer the initial screener tests, the people who sit down and write the individualized support plans, the people who know for a fact that a child has finished their 4 years of monitoring the EL teachers, are completely locked out of making any changes to the system.
Yes, they have all the knowledge, but zero authority in the software.
Meanwhile, the people with the actual keys to the system, the registrars and the front office data clerks, are incredibly busy people who likely have no idea what the nuance of EL compliance law entails.
Exactly. A front office clerk doesn't necessarily know the difference between Title III monitoring requirements and a WIDA access growth percentile.
It is a permanent structural gap between the people who know the truth and the people who hold the keys.
And that separation guarantees that the data will eventually degrade. It is the exact friction point causing the compliance nightmares we saw in those emails.
It's unavoidable.
Right, because when you separate the data entry permissions from the actual programmatic knowledge, errors don't just happen occasionally, they compound. They hide in the system until a crisis like a locked home language field forces them into the light. And by then, you're already out of compliance.
So we've diagnosed the disease. The permission gap is creating chaos. It's time to shift to the cure.
Let's do it.
How do districts legally protect themselves and actually fix this broken workflow? Because reading through the federal law provided in the sources, it is very clear that saying our computer system was confusing or our clerk was busy are not valid legal defenses.
They absolutely are not valid defenses. Under Title III of the Every Student Succeeds Act, and specifically outlined in the 2015 Office for Civil Rights Dear Colleague letter on English learner students, districts are legally mandated to have robust functional systems in place to promptly identify and serve EL students.
Promptly being the key word.
Yes. Missing or inaccurate records in Infinite Campus aren't viewed as simple clerical oops moments. To the Office for Civil Rights, they are literal documented evidence of systemic compliance failure.
Wow.
If a district is audited under Kentucky administrative regulations with these kinds of errors, they could be forced into strict, highly monitored corrective action plans.
The legal hammer is heavy and it swings hard. So how do we fix the friction? The sources outline several practical solutions that districts must implement, and it really starts with bridging that gap between knowledge and permission.
Yeah, and if the problem is that nobody knows whose job it is, the obvious first step is physically writing down a workflow document.
Writing a workflow document sounds incredibly simple, but it is the hardest step because it requires sitting all these busy people down in a room and mapping out reality.
Exactly. A district has to explicitly document who enters what data exactly when they enter it and in what specific tab of Infinite Campus. No more emails asking who is on first.
Right. And tied directly to that is assigning real ownership. If you tell an EL coordinator they are responsible for ensuring every student has an EL flag, you have to actually give them the IT permissions to check the box.
It sounds so basic.
It does. You cannot hold an educator accountable for a data field they are digitally locked out of. But the sources show districts are failing to do this.
Mostly because IT departments are understandably terrified of data corruption, so they just lock everything down by default, which leads to the next necessary fix, establishing an exception process.
Oh, like the escape room.
Exactly. Think back to our escape room scenario with the home language field. If a field is locked by policy to prevent accidental overwrites, there has to be a documented rapid escalation path to unlock it when an error is found.
Yeah, updates are not permitted is simply not an acceptable answer when federal civil rights compliance is on the line.
Not at all.
But what about the front office? The registrars are the ones accidentally typing English instead of Spanish when a family enrolls. How do we fix that friction point without just yelling at them to type more carefully?
By explaining the why behind the what. Front office registrars are drowning in paperwork. If checking the home language box is just one of 100 fields they have to fill out to get a kid into a classroom, mistakes will happen.
Right, they're human.
But if districts implement enrollment training that explains why this data matters, that selecting a non-English language legally triggers federal civil rights protections and funding registrars understand the gravity of that specific field, they become the first line of defense rather than a point of failure.
That makes total sense. Give them the context. Now, I want to talk about auditing. The sources heavily emphasize that districts need to run monthly data audits.
Yes, monthly.
But audit is a terrifying word that usually implies accountants in suits going through filing cabinets. If a district administrator is sitting down at their computer tomorrow to run an audit in Infinite Campus, what are they actually doing?
They are essentially hunting for contradictions in the software. You run reports to find where the logic of the system breaks down.
Give us an example.
For example, you pull a list of every student whose profile says they speak a language other than English at home, but who magically does not have an EL flag. That is a contradiction you have to investigate.
You're looking for the ghosts.
Exactly. Another contradiction. You look for a kid who has an EL flag, but has absolutely no WIDA screener test scores attached to their file. How did they get the flag if they were never tested?
Right.
You hunt for students with an EL flag who don't have an active program support plan. You hunt for students who are in year 4 of monitoring, but haven't been officially exited.
Like our stuck students.
Exactly. And crucially, you pull a report of every student who withdrew from the district to ensure their EL records are fully complete before that data is sent to their next school.
That reframes auditing from a scary punishment into just a routine logic puzzle. You're just matching the pieces.
Exactly. It's just maintenance.
So if you are listening to this right now and you work in a school district, I want you to ask yourself a direct diagnostic question. Who owns the EL data in your building?
Such a good question.
Who actually holds the digital keys to Infinite Campus? If you can't answer that immediately, you've already found your first structural problem.
It is the single most important question a district leader can ask about their data management.
So what does this all mean when we zoom out? An EL flag isn't just a bureaucratic hurdle, and a locked data field isn't just an IT annoyance. That little digital checkbox is the literal lifeline that guarantees a student's civil right to specialized educational services.
And it dictates the federal funding that pays the teachers who provide those services.
Exactly. Today, we've navigated the missing flag that makes students invisible, the trapped monitored students caught in a digital escape room, the permission gaps that pit programmatic knowledge against IT authority, and the concrete ways districts must hunt for contradictions to fix the system.
You know, if we really want to synthesize this and look at the broader implications, it raises a profound question for all of us about how our institutions operate.
Oh, how so?
Well, we've spent this time looking at how the permission gap creates invisible English learners. But if databases are this deeply siloed across an entire school district, what other highly vulnerable student populations are currently falling through the cracks of the software?
Wow, that is a big question.
Think about students who urgently require special education services and individualized education programs. Or consider students who are currently experiencing homelessness and qualify for McKinney-Vento protections.
And McKinney-Vento, that's the federal law ensuring homeless youth get immediate school enrollment and transportation support, right?
Exactly. Are there students in those vulnerable populations sitting in a classroom right now, completely invisible to the state accountability system, simply because the teacher who knows their story, who sees their struggle every single day, doesn't have the IT permissions to check a box?
That is a chilling thought, and honestly, the exact reason why this deep dive matters so much. The data isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. It represents real kids who need real support. Thank you for joining us as we unpacked this. Keep asking the hard questions about the invisible systems that govern our world, and if you work in education, definitely make sure you know exactly who is in charge of putting those digital intake bracelets on your students. See you next time.